going on? Welcome to The Bottom Line, your home for reaction videos, interviews, live streams, sports talk, and more. I'm Jimmy Finizzi. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. New Jersey Devils fans, today is your day to go absolutely crazy. And yes, if you're watching on the YouTube side of things, I have two very special guests with me. You probably know them by now, but if you don't, I will introduce you anyway. One of them being my former co-host and now the host of the Devil State of Mind podcast, Neil Villapiano. And to my bottom here, we got the host of the Heads Up Hockey podcast. You can listen to both podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. He is known as Jersey Joe. Gentlemen, how the heck are we doing? Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Oh, I guess I'm starting, Joe.
I was like, wait. Who's
love
the greetings first, Neil or Joe?
Fantastic start. We're off to a fantastic start. I'm doing well. It's been a long time since the last time I was on The Bottom Line. Certainly a different intro than what I remember. I'm sure you've changed it up over the years, but
we've done a lot of revamping since you left.
Right, of course. It's not just sports anymore. It's not just sports anymore, which I mean, it never was just sports, but nonetheless, I'm doing well. Things can't really be much better than they are right now, especially with the Devils. You know, you're riding high. You know, you're in the playoffs. You know that when the regular season comes to an end, you're going to be one of the 16 teams left, and that's a really good feeling. As Nico Hischier put it during his post-game comments, said it feels good. It really does feel good to know that you're going into the playoffs when the season ends. Me personally, doing pretty well. Podcast has been going strong. And Joe obviously is probably my number one fan. I don't think
He supported me for a long time. So
he's been supporting me since day. He was one of the first guests I ever had on the podcast. He's been on several times. But yeah, I'm doing well and looking forward to talking about my favorite thing, and that is the New Jersey Devils.
Hey, Joe, I know it's your first time on the show, and it certainly will not be your last. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Just over the past 4 years, technically 5 seasons, because of COVID, ruined a little bit of my podcasting during that time. But I've been archiving the player development side, the hockey side of when the Devils were in their ruts and they were just getting built. I wanted to elaborate more on the prospects, the hockey operations, the more boring stuff that people might not care so much, but now people are going to now care for, now that the Devils are in the playoffs since 17-18. So I wanted to bring light to people, and plus, I've been writing all over the hockey metrosphere and whatnot. So with that being said, I sent you one of my articles just to elaborate a little bit more on a bit of a historical trend.
Yeah, no, it was a very interesting read. I definitely got a kick out of it. But hey, listen, it's really great to have you gentlemen on here to talk some hockey. It's been a while since we've talked hockey in general on this show, and I'm really glad to bring the topic back. And of course, we're talking all things Devils today. Yes, we will go around a little bit more in the Metro later on because we've got some playoff seedings to talk about.
No one cares.
I see how it is. But no, listen.
Nobody cares.
In all seriousness, let's talk some Devils, shall we? Because for the first time since 2018, the New Jersey Devils are in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And, I know both of you are thrilled. It's been a long, tumultuous few years with rebuilding, trying to get the right players around the team and all that other awesome stuff. But I just want to get both of your guys' perspective, and Neil, since you were my former co-host, I'll start with you on this. How should Devils fans be feeling about this?
Elated, I think, would be the word that I would use to that Devils fans should feel, the feeling that they should have. I mean, it goes without saying that the last decade for the Devils has certainly not been what anybody has wanted to see, with missing the playoffs most of the time, and not only missing it, but not even coming close. I mean, quite frankly, you look at last year, for an example. The Devils finished, I think, somewhere around 40 to 50 points out of a playoff spot. And they go from that to having 100 points this year, being 7 wins away from breaking the franchise record for most wins in a season. I mean, they're 5 away from 50. right now, which is something I feel like I never would have seen in my lifetime. And I think going through the last couple of years in particular, between 17, 18 to now, you really kind of looked at it as a Devils fan and said, when are we finally going to stop saying, the future's bright and starts talking about the present and in conjunction with the future? And I think finally we are at that point. And, it was just it was a relief, but it was certainly mostly elation for this franchise to just be able to finally get over that hump, complete the first task of this season. And that was to get back into the dance. I'm 100% certain that nobody thought the Devils would get to the playoffs in this fashion, but certainly it is best case scenario. It has been a phenomenal year with still many games to go in the regular season. 9 games is actually a lot of games, a lot more than people might think it actually is. So there's still a lot of time left to generate success, both just in lines and chemistry, but also wins and losses and just getting points. And you're still trying to figure out your playoff positioning. It's still not a guarantee yet as to where the Devils will be when the season ends. But I think this is just wonderful. And all these Devils fans deserve this. They deserve to have that moment in the sun, knowing that they're in the playoffs with many games to spare, and knowing that when the regular season ends, the New Jersey Devils will be one of 16 teams remaining with a chance to compete for Lord Stanley's Cup. And I think that really is an exciting thing. And it's not like 17-18 where it feels like a fluke. It certainly feels more legit that this team has worked its way to achieving this goal. And so, yeah, elation would be the word that I would use to describe the overall feeling of this fan base, since we clinched the playoffs 2 days ago.
Yeah, you mentioned the 9 games that are remaining, and we'll get to that and the standings in the Metro in a little bit. But Joe, what about you? What word would you use to describe how Devils fans should feel about this?
Sasquatch.
It's several weights lifted off the shoulders of Devils fans. Honestly, like me, it feels like when you go to the gym, you get past the 120-pound mark and then you hit the 130. You're like, all right, we raised the bar now. It's like you're stepping up to the plate. Your team's feeling that extra strength. Your fan base feeling extra strong now. And with guys like Timo Meier added in, and now he's going to get extended. Brad's going to get extended. And we don't even have Simon Nemec or Luke Hughes yet. And these guys can all jump in on the expanded roster. And even Brian Halonen can jump in. And so this is going to only not just give, a really good first attempt at the playoff window. You have at least 10 to 20 years, theoretically, to attempt to win not just one, but multiple. I may sound like a Blackhawks fan back in the day, but you got so many attempts at trying to hoist that cup. It gives a lot of daylight. So with the other teams in the Metro getting older, like the Islanders and the Penguins and the Capitals, this is going to allow the Devils fans to feel more confident when the Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier era is just only taking off.
Yeah, no, definitely. Jack Hughes, I mean, there really is nothing you can say about that young man. He is an absolute superstar. He's got, 40-plus goals this season? I mean, he's an all-star for a reason. He's going to be sticking around for a while. Devils definitely have a lot of young talent. You mentioned Jesper Bratt. Luke Hughes is going to come along very soon. And I know Devils fans may have to wait a little bit longer for Luke Hughes to come along, as Michigan is still playing in the, I think the Frozen Four is sometime this week?
Yeah, probably in the next few days.
Next week. Okay, next week.
So it's like I believe it's next weekend, I believe.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. So
they destroyed my sister's alma mater, Colgate, 11-1.
Dude, you knew Colgate wasn't going to win. I'm sorry, Joe, but Colgate was not going to win.
Look, I would never bet money on Colgate. Sorry, Lindsay, but
whoops.
I could not. I just knew the battle was over before it began. But anyways, back to the NHL.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to talk over you during that, Joe. I apologize. But what I was going to say here, and this is the last time I'll cut anybody off, I promise. So once the Frozen Four is over, then Luke Hughes could probably join the team, sometime in, the second week of April, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it would probably be obviously, if he goes all the way to the national championship, whether he wins or loses, the best case scenario would be he would get a chance to play in maybe 1 or 2 games left in the season. And the expectation, regardless, is that Luke Hughes will be on this team. Will he be with the team once they get into the playoffs? It's a pot. Let's put it this way. I'll give you a quick example for people, and this might be for a little bit older generation. Joe will definitely know where I'm coming from with this.
Sure.
When the Yankees made it back to the playoffs in 1995, with Don Mattingly and all that, they had Derek Jeter. Jeter did not play a single game in the playoffs. No. They just had him there to kind of watch, learn, gain some form of experience. That could potentially be what the Devils do with Luke Hughes going into the playoffs. They may not. They may just say, you know what? After these 2 games, we're going to send you down to Utica and play the rest of the year with them to get some opportunity to play, in that way, which I think honestly would be, in my opinion, I would like to think that that's the better alternative. I do want to see him play in New Jersey. I think everybody wants to see him get that opportunity. They could go, and Joe has written about this and has talked to me about it before. They could go the Cale Makar route, where they just plug him in right away and let's just get it going, which would be fine as well. I just hope that people don't have this over-the-top expectation right away that he's going to be like Cale Makar and jump in and have, if he has one bad game. I know this fan base well enough, and Joe knows it as well, that the second somebody doesn't do something spectacular in one game,
everyone starts going frantic,
exactly,
drinking too much caffeine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of right. That's exactly the way that you want to look at it with this. So for me, I just want to see Luke Hughes at this point go as far as he can with Michigan. And that means to certainly win a national championship. I think that would be great. And then kind of go from there. And then we'll see where the chips may lie when we get to that point. And then we'll go from there. So yeah, I think the expectation is Luke Hughes is going to be with the Devils once his season is over. I think the Devils were hoping that maybe like last night his season would have ended, and then he gets 5, 6, 7, however many games to play. But that's not the case, so we'll have to wait a little bit longer. But I do think regardless, he is going to play with the Devils once his college season is over in Michigan.
We're talking to Neil Villapiano and Joe Stanislaw here on The Bottom Line, talking all things New Jersey Devils and NHL today. We thank you for joining us here. So let's go over the Metro Division standings and go over the Devils' last 9 games of the regular season. So as far as the division, obviously at the time we're shooting this, things are subject to change, but currently the Carolina Hurricanes still hold first place with 103 points. They're in first place in the Metro. They already clinched a playoff spot. The Devils are in second place. They clinched the playoff spot. They have 100 points. My New York Rangers are in third place in the Metro with 96 points. They're 4 points behind, the New Jersey Devils. And the 2 wildcard spots in the Metro are held by the New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins, with Florida just outside along with the Buffalo Sabres. So with that in mind, let's go over the Devils' last 9 games of the regular season. At the time we are shooting this episode, tonight the Devils play the New York Islanders at UBS Arena at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Then after that, they're home against my New York Rangers on March 30th. That's a 7 p.m. Eastern Time puck drop. And then they go to Chicago on April 1st, at Winnipeg on April 2nd, home against the Penguins on April 4th, home against the Blue Jackets on April 6th, at Boston, which, my God, Boston's just a whole other animal. That's on April 8th, home against the Sabres. That's their regular season home finale on April 11th. And then on the road on my birthday, April 13th, against the Washington Capitals, which, by the way, the Capitals are not even close to actually, I shouldn't say not really close. They are close, but they're falling a little bit far behind out of a wild card spot for the playoffs. They're 76 points. They're 34-32. They're not really that impressive. I mean, look, outside of Alex Ovechkin, who's obviously a monster in his own right, are the Capitals really doing all that much? Probably not, but that's another story for another day. We're not talking about the Capitals today. But if I go to the Devils' last 9 games, I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
I will say this. When the Capitals had the chance to sign one of Samsonov or Vanacek back, and once I knew Samsonov went to Toronto, I knew the Devils had a really good chance at getting Vitek Vanacek. Mm-hmm. And when the Devils parlayed those picks to get him, I knew the problems in net were being solved a lot quicker than expected. And Neil and I were at the draft party day one.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew, the good things were happening with Nemec getting drafted. And then day two, our expectations were like, whoa, this has just happened. And this guy could be really something. And I spoke with Trey Matthews about Vanacek. I said, this guy has the potential to be a potential number one in New Jersey, and if not, take over Blackwood's spot, and look where he's at.
Yep.
That's a fair point. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, with the Devils' goalies, look, Vanacek's been fine. I'm not questioning Vanacek. He's been fine. That Schmidt kid, though,
he's been more than fine.
That kid looks to have a ton of potential. I really am enjoying what I'm seeing from him. But look, if we're being honest here, I like Blackwood, but this season has kind of been a wash. I mean, look, injuries don't help him, but
the last 3 years for Blackwood have been a wash. Let's call it you got to call it like it is. I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Jimmy, but
no, please go ahead.
I'm at this point where we have to accept that regardless of what happens the rest of the way, Blackwood is not coming back after this season. He just isn't. He just isn't. Because you have guys like Akira Schmid and Nico Dawes who are waiting in the wings, who have a ton of experience at a very young age. Akira Schmid, who I've been very high on since he played in the USHL a couple of years ago. He is flourishing. He is getting better with every game. Did he have a rough game against Buffalo last week? Yeah, but it wasn't entirely because he played poorly. It's because we have too many defensive breakdowns. Joe knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. So with the
battles here and there, Damon Severson's on the way out.
Right. So I mean, the thing about Blackwood is this. I was certainly surprised he played on Saturday. I didn't think he played all that particularly well, but obviously the offense certainly came to play in the second and third periods against Ottawa. But am I thrilled about going into the playoffs with Vitek and Blackwood? I'm not panicking or anything, but I'm not super thrilled either. I knew that Schmid was going to get sent down the moment that Blackwood came back, and as a result, yesterday the Devils sent Schmid back down to Utica, which is fine. I mean, that certainly helps Utica's playoff run, no question about it. But
where is Utica in the standings, by the way?
They are in fourth place in the Eastern Conference at the time of this recording. So they got off to a slow start in the season, but definitely the last 2.5 months they have really, really picked it up, especially with guys like Graham Clark, Alex Holtz now back down there. Simone Nemet's developing relatively well in his first year in North America, and a couple of other guys like that. But just looking at it from Blackwood's perspective, look, it's unfortunate that he could never get back to where he was back in 2019, whether that was completely on the organization or injuries or he didn't want to get vaccinated or whatever. The reality is that it's just like Pavel Zacha. It's just not going to work out anymore here. If he goes on to be really good somewhere else, great, good for him, whatever. You can only give a guy so many opportunities before you have to say to yourself, we need to make a change. And if Blackwood played the whole year healthy or, whatever, I don't think personally the Devils are in the position that they're in right now. I mean, Vitek is a big reason that we're here. Kira Schmidt has certainly stepped up when he's needed to. He has played a handful of really, really strong games. And I think that he's going to be part of our long-term success in net. Same thing with Nico Dawes. Jakub Malik as well, a guy who the Devils drafted in the late rounds, has actually been really doing pretty well over
Brennan,
in
Cole Brady, Tyler Brennan and Cole Brady.
Tyler Brennan, yep. So we have a boatload. We have a boatload. And yes, the Devils could obviously go for another option in free agency or trade this upcoming offseason.
Right.
I don't think they go down that route, but who knows? But yeah, in terms of Blackwood, it sucks because I've really wanted Blackwood to be the guy. I really thought he was going to be the guy. And at times he showed that, but many more times nowadays, it just isn't there. He plays well enough to get by with some wins, but is he the guy that we can rely on going into the playoffs? That remains to be seen. So, it is what it is. We got to rock with what we got.
Joe, you care to respond to that before we move on?
What's the question?
Oh no, I was saying, would you care to respond to that before we move on?
On Blackwood?
Yes.
Look, his ship has sailed, and it's about time that they move into a different direction. And the Devils have won more games without him. And to me, it's like having Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You don't know who you're going to get in that. And to me, like, I've heard that, not trying to degrade him or anything, but I've heard some, like, locker room stuff about him that's not as positive. And I heard that from other season ticket holders. Me watching some of his interviews where he's just a little too cutthroat, and that's not what I want to see in the locker room if I'm Tom Fitzgerald. So for me, like having an Akira Schmid who's more calm, composed type guy, he can be a little funny from what I've seen in interviews. Goalies are very special breeds of people. They're kind of like pitchers in baseball, where they have a sense of humor. They are a little awkward, but their brains work and function in a different way.
That's a very good point. I didn't think of that. Wow. That's a very, very good point. That might be one of the best analogies we've had on the show so far. Appreciate that, Joe. But with that being said, now let's talk about these last 9 games here. I mentioned them before. You got Islanders, Rangers, and so forth. So I guess the question I want to ask you guys is, and Joe, I'll start with you on this one, is simply this. What do you expect from the Devils for these last 9 regular season games as they continue to try to make a push towards potentially getting first place in the Metro?
So let me start game by game. Okay. Now, looking at the Islanders, I mean, sure looks like a cakewalk, but it's not, because they're going to play the 1-3-1 blue line trap, and the Devils are going to have to use the flank, flick it around. Timo Meier blitz in, seize the puck. Jack Hughes will be in the slot, and then you're going to have someone like a Dougie Hamilton on that offensive blue line ready to take a shot on net. And then you're going to have someone like a Miles Wood on the 3rd, 4th line, also doing similar and wearing down the defense of the Islanders. Anyways, it's not going to be a pretty win, but it's going to be a playoff gritty win if they pull off 2 points. Now, if they get a point, they come within 2 points of Carolina, as long as Carolina doesn't win.
Wouldn't it go to 1, Joe, if Carolina loses in reg, correct? Right? Because we're only 3.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
1 point.
Yeah, as long as as I said, as long as Carolina does not win.
Does not win. Okay, fair enough.
That's what I said.
Yeah, because Carolina doesn't play
it
tonight at the time we're shooting this, so it could be a really big help for the Devils here if they win.
And then if the Devils play like they did against the Rangers, they did at home, and they won in overtime, they get the 2 points. That's what, 4 points there, 3 points depending on the situation with the Islanders.
Yep.
So, but I look at Chicago as the easiest of the 2 points, because they're tanking for Bedard or Michkov.
Yeah, no,
they don't give a damn.
Well, they could tank for Fantilli as well if they felt like it.
Yeah,
if they want to go that hard. But if the Devils want to play roulette with Winnipeg, they're going to really have to come guns a-blazing and ruin their playoff hopes.
Isn't Winnipeg in a wild card spot too?
That's what I'm saying. Ruin their playoffs.
Hurt their chances is what he's trying to say.
Just to ruin it.
Right.
And then I will say, and it's a win in Winnipeg. The Devils win. The Devils win. That would be my attitude.
Nice John Sterling impersonation.
Joe Sterling for that one. But when the Devils play Pittsburgh, the Devils have been holding on to their number. And Pittsburgh doesn't scare me in the regular season, but more so in playoffs.
Yeah.
Because they still have plenty of veterans that can turn it on, but Father Time's only going to catch up with them, and their farm system's not helping.
No, absolutely not. I mean, when was the last time that the Penguins had actually a really decent farm system?
Not that I could remember.
Exactly. Probably when they the Yankees. Probably when they won back-to-back Stanley Cups. But that's just me. I don't know.
But then you look at the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are the second easiest win possible.
Yeah.
And I say possible because, like Neil always says, hockey is a magical, unpredictable sport.
Yep.
And like my buddy Trey Matthews says, you got to strike while the iron is hot. I say you got to be in it to win it. Otherwise, you got to make fun out of Johnny Gaudreau picking the wrong team. And that guy, he's a Philly guy for a Southwest Jersey person. But they're going for the Bedard sweepstakes, and you know what? As long as they don't get Bedard, I'm fine.
Fair enough.
But I could care less about the Boston game. I mean, look, it's going to be a tough battle. It's going to prime the Devils up for the first round against the Rangers or whoever they play off with.
Right.
I mean, as long as they play good and they get a point or whatever, I'm happy. But if they can get revenge against Buffalo, I would be very happy because Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or whoever they put in that, and it's just going to be like, let's ruin their odds at getting a wild card. And then you got Washington, just destroy Ovechkin and his team's hopes for the rest of their lives in the next upcoming season. So I really don't have any respect for Ovechkin for torching the Devils and the Rangers.
Fair enough. I'll give you that. Neil, what about you? What do you expect these last 9 regular season games?
Well, it's certainly not as detailed as Joe's outlook, so I'll probably keep it more generalized. As far as what I'm looking for, something that people are not talking about enough is that the Devils have lost 5 of their last 7 games. So They haven't really been playing that well of hockey, despite obviously getting into playoffs and all that stuff. I just want to see much more cohesion. I want to see better chemistry. I want to see better hockey. This team has not played a full 60 minutes of, hockey since the 7-0 shutout a couple weeks ago in late February against the Flyers. I feel like the Devils are capable of doing that on a consistent basis, not winning 7-0, but just playing an overall good brand of hockey. Whether it's because of the fact that, teams have figured us out a lot more, or guys are tired, guys are banged up, whatever the case may be, Lindy Ruff and the coaching staff have a responsibility to try to get this team to be more disciplined, to play much more to their strengths, and go from there. And I think that's really what I want to see from this team. I want to see better goaltending. I want to see much fewer defensive breakdowns. I think it just happens way too often that we just allow guys to be wide open in the slot in particular. And I just want to see the team be where they were like back in November, that aggressive, dominating, putting the puck in it. Look at the game against Tampa Bay a couple weeks ago, like almost 2 weeks ago, or a week and change ago when the Devils came back and beat Tampa. The Devils outshot Tampa Bay like 39-20, and they really dominated offensively, and they settled everything down. That's what I want to see more of. I want to see guys solidify their roles on this team. I want to get the line solidified moving forward. I really do want to see more of a line of Nico, Timo, and Mercer, because I feel like that personally is going to be a very effective line. I want to see Tatar in that second line with Jack, because I actually think Tatar plays better with Jack than he does Nico. This is my opinion on the matter. And I just want to see guys compete. That's all I want. I just want to see these guys compete these last 9 games. Turn these last 9 games into Game 7 of a playoff series, each one of them. Don't take any of these teams lightly. Don't do what you did against Buffalo, where you just felt like the Sabres were just going to roll over and die and just let us easily cakewalk to a win. And as Joe mentioned, talk about the game tonight against the Islanders. This, on paper, looks like a walk in the park. The Devils should just dominate, and that's that. It's not going to happen. Is it possible it could happen? Yes. Is it likely? No. Most likely, it's going to be a dogfight. The Islanders don't score very much. So this is going to be a much more drag-it-out, low-scoring game. It's going to be tough against that really good defense and tremendous, basically elite goaltending that the Islanders get from Ilya Sorokin and also Semyon Varlamov, but Sorokin's playing tonight. But it's having these opportunities where you're taking on a team that's fighting for their playoff lives. It is not a guarantee the Islanders make the playoffs. They're only about 4 or 5 points ahead of Florida right now. So they could collapse at any moment and be knocked out. So they're going to want to come in. This is a must-win game for them. Is it a must-win for us? Not on paper, but it's still a must-win in my opinion because you want to build off that success. You want to build off, trying to get these playoff type wins in the regular season to give you that confidence going into the actual dance. So for me, I want to see the following things: more consistency, more chemistry, less defensive breakdowns, and overall just compete. Don't take games lightly. Don't do anything like that. You have a massive, massive game against the Rangers on Thursday. I cannot stress enough how important that game is. Yes. Knowing that there's a 95% chance you're playing them in the first round, you have a chance to win the season series. That gives you a lot of confidence going into that series against the Rangers. Because there's a lot of Rangers people that don't want to play the Devils in the first round because they respect us enough that we are capable of knocking them out and ruining their chances in round one. At the end of the day, they have to treat every game like it's the last game of the season. You have to treat it that way. And I would like to hope that that's how Lindy Ruff's going to operate these last 9 games moving forward and just get us some momentum going into the playoffs. Joe, more than anybody, understands this completely. If you go into the playoffs with momentum, maybe a couple game winning streak, playing some really good hockey, that gives you an extra boost once the playoffs start, that you're playing good hockey and you're going into a series most likely against the team you have played a handful of times and is in your own division. So you know them very well. Now, if they win the division, there's a good chance they play someone else in their division. Probably Pittsburgh, maybe the Islanders, who knows? It's very possible. So at the end of the day, let's just compete. Let's make these last 9 games the best 9-game stretch of the entire season. And that includes what we did back in November. So that's the way I want to see. That's my expectation. That's what I want to see from this team in these final 9 games.
What I'll also throw in there is that there's also players who are restricted free agents and UFAs who are looking for a nice payday from Tom Fitzgerald. And so there's going to be a monetary incentive for them to play their freaking guts out against not just the Islanders, the Rangers, but even freaking Buffalo. You have to, because A, it's your living. B, you want to secure your spot, and you want to be in the league next season. So really, also, if you want to be with this New Jersey Devils team that's going to be really good for so long, you have to play every game, like Neil said, as a Game 7. If not, you're on the cut list.
Right.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And let's go over a couple of teams in the Metro who are vying for playoff spots and, more importantly, playoff seeding. You guys mentioned the Islanders. Let's talk about them for a little bit here. Tonight, at the time we're shooting this, is pretty important for them if they want to keep their wild card hopes alive. Because let's face it, I don't think they're catching the Rangers. I don't think they're catching the Devils, regardless of what happens tonight, whether the Islanders win or lose. But the Islanders, I feel like this is more important for them because if they lose tonight, I'm trying to check here. Pittsburgh does not play tonight. Because I was going to say, if Pittsburgh played tonight and Pittsburgh won, then if the Islanders lost, then that would be massive. Because then Pittsburgh would have the first wild card spot. Because as we talked about earlier, Pittsburgh's window is closing. Crosby, Malkin, and Letang are not getting any younger. And plus, Chris Letang at this point in his career, I'm sorry, with what he's been going through, with suffering 2 strokes, I think that man should just retire. I'm sorry, I hate to say that. I really respect the guy, but Chris Letang needs to call it a career. I really respect his game, but 2 strokes, that's awfully dangerous conditions to be playing when you have those kind of issues. Look, I wish nothing but the best for Letang, but even still, I think you should call it a career, at least after these playoffs. But that's just me. But I'm getting sidetracked here. I apologize. But for the Islanders, from the Islanders' perspective of things, I know our good friend Kim Moisa, aka Idols Girl 3, is probably listening to this right now. So she's probably going to take this with a grain of salt. But tonight's game is massive for the New York Islanders if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive here.
Yeah, I think you look at it and you say to yourself, I mean, the Islanders have certainly dealt with a lot of injuries. They've dealt with a lot of inconsistencies. They pulled off that big trade to kind of start things off with the trade deadline by acquiring Bo Horvat. They're doing everything possible to scrap their way into getting into the playoffs. And so for them, every game moving forward is going to be must win. They do not want to put themselves in a position where maybe they have to rely on someone else to lose in order for them to get in. They want to be able to control their own destiny. I mean, that's basically what the Devils were in, because even if the Rangers had won against Florida on Saturday, the Devils still would have gotten in because they would have, they beat Ottawa. So, right. Yeah, the Islanders certainly are in a very, very tough spot. They know that they're not going to be able to catch up to the Rangers. We know that pretty much the top 3 is going to be Carolina, New Jersey, and the Rangers.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a particular order. That's just where things are right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then you got, you're battling Pittsburgh. Which Pittsburgh is playing very well at the right time. You can clearly see that that's what's going on. You got the Panthers to worry about, and you have the Sabres to worry about. And to an extent, you'd still have the Capitals. Any of these teams can get hot at the right time in this last 9-10 game stretch that a lot of these teams have. So for the Islanders, it is about picking up points no matter how you can get it. You have to find a way to get points in every game moving forward. You can't afford to drop a game or two in regulation. And it starts tonight. You're going up against one of the best teams in the NHL, a team that, has 100 points, has some of the most up-and-coming talented players in the league, going to be around for a long time, and a huge opportunity here to try to win the season series as well, or I think at least tie it, because the Devils have won 2 of the 3 games they've faced the Islanders. So
yes,
to at least
you're right
tie the season series, and it's going to be big. So I expect nothing from the Islanders except to grind it out these last 10 games and to go as hard as they can to try to get in.
And by the way, Joe, I'll get to you in a second, Joe. I apologize, but I just checked the schedule. Pittsburgh doesn't play again until Thursday, March 30th at home against the Nashville Predators. So if you're the Islanders, you have to take advantage of this and try to get at least 2 of the 4 possible points here to keep Pittsburgh off your trails here.
Very true.
Anyway, Joe, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So a lot of the things is I'm looking at Cat Friendly, and you look at the Islanders from defense, forward core to goaltending. They're screwed all the way till the end of 23-24. And Varlamov will be up for a contract. You have guys like, let's see, Scott Mayfield's up. Samuel Bolduc is going to be an RFA. You have Parker Witherspoon's a UFA Group 6 category. Then you have Parise, Hudson Fashing's up. And then you have guys like Pierre Engvall, who are all up on contracts. Besides Varlamov, you really have to make a few trades if, the Islanders do not make any offseason moves to alleviate cap problem. And Uncle Lou is hamstringing the Islanders. And it reminds me of the old Devils when Lou was on his last legs. And to look at that, I foreshadow the Islanders to start beginning to collapse because those pillars are starting to now.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. I happen to agree with you. So tonight's game is massive for the Islanders. And like I said, Pittsburgh doesn't play again until Thursday at the time we're shooting this. So it's a massive, massive 2 games coming up for the Islanders. As far as Carolina is concerned, I mean, look, anything can happen at any point with Carolina. Devils are not far behind their trails, only 3 points behind first place. Anything can happen. So, look, I really don't know what's going to happen with the Hurricanes. I mean, look, Freddie Anderson's been playing great. Sebastian Aho, Jordan Martinuk. I mean, they got a lot of young talent. They got a great head coach. So I really don't know what to expect from Carolina. Do I expect them to hold on to first place? That remains to be seen depending on how the Devils do these last 9 regular season games. It is possible, though, that the Devils could lock up first place in the Metro by the time the regular season is over, and that Carolina could take second place. So you never know with Carolina. They're an on and off team, in my opinion, even though they are very good this year. We'll see what happens with Carolina. So as far as my
Carolina does have a good amount of veterans.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I was going to say Carolina has a good amount of veterans, but also like they got youngsters like Seth Jarvis who can step up in an instance, and they just have a really good defensive blue line that holds them stable. But when they don't, then it, like you said before, makes them unstable. But they have gelled a little bit more than they did last year after being ousted by the Rangers.
True. Hey, listen, I'm going to be honest. Nobody expected the Rangers to bounce Carolina out the way they did last year. I didn't expect it. I picked Carolina in 6 that year. Neil knows this. My current co-host, Austin, knows this. I wasn't expecting anything from the Rangers last playoffs. Anybody who picked them to make the conference finals last year is lying. They're lying, okay? Because I didn't pick them to go to the conference finals.
Right.
I picked them to get bounced out in the second round, okay? So let's just call it what it is. But speaking of the... Sorry, Neil, go ahead.
I think the matchup that the Rangers would prefer is to probably play Carolina in the first round because of the fact of their recent success against the Hurricanes. But I don't think you can make any mistake about it. I know the Hurricanes are not at full strength. Andrei Svechnikov is out for the year. Max Pacioretty is going to be out for the year. So they're somewhat depleted on the offensive side. But make no mistake, when the playoffs come around, this team's going to be ready to go. I think in terms of where they're going to finish, I still firmly believe that they are going to win the division.
Okay.
It's not that I don't believe in the Devils that they can win the division. I think they certainly can. It's just a matter of when Carolina needs a big win, they find a way to get it done. That's really what it is. Regardless of what the Devils or anyone else does, they find a way to win those games that you look at and you say, okay, I mean, there's a chance that they might lose. You know, they play Boston or something. Okay, they might lose. And then they by the way, look at the mini series they had with the Rangers, right? I didn't think that they would win the first game in New York, and they did. That was kind of an impressive thing. And then they end up losing the second game in Carolina. So go figure. You know, it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you know, I think Carolina is struggling right now with some consistency. I do think that they are going to figure it out. I think it's just a matter of getting through it here and getting through this little difficulty right now, but you'd rather have it now than in the playoffs. I don't think Carolina really cares at all who they play in the first round. Whoever they play is whoever they play. And, you know, still winning a division title is still an important achievement regardless of the situation. So clearly they're going to want to go for first place. They know the Devils are right on their tail, but let's just point this out really quickly. Both the Devils and Carolina play at least 5 teams in the last 9-10 games that are going to be in the playoffs. So they're going up against a lot of teams that they're going to potentially see in the playoffs and going to make some pretty big time games. So it's going to come. I do believe that the division will come down to the wire. Maybe the last 2 or 3 games we'll kind of get a better answer of what's going to happen. But I still think that Carolina is a very dangerous team when they got all things clicking, regardless of who's playing or not. You know, they haven't always had the world's greatest amount of talent, but the one thing that they always have been, and that is a good team that plays together as a cohesive unit very, very well. And they got Jesse Puljujarvi at the deadline, which wasn't saying a whole lot, but you know what? If Puljujarvi can find that little rhythm that he had at certain points in Edmonton here in Carolina, like we saw last year with Max Domi, and even a little bit in the playoffs with Kotkaniemi, I think it could work out very, very well for them. So don't count out or don't dismiss Carolina by any means, because when they get it going, they're just as good as any team in the league.
Now, that's a fair point, but losing Svestikov is a major, major loss. That is definitely going to impact them a ton.
And one of the guys that made a difference against Carolina for New Jersey was Dawson Mercer, and
yes,
he's a very well-rounded right shot that New Jersey has, and he had such really good hands in that game that he power forwarded way into scoring that goal against Kochetkov. And to me, Kochetkov is an elite level goaltender for many years, and he's one of the reasons why Russia has really good dominance in the goaltending department, and it's why Carolina is going to be very good for X amount of years. And I don't see them giving up on Freddie Anderson anytime soon. But
absolutely not.
If the Devils get out of the first round and let's say they don't have Blackwood, they bring up Schmid, you have two really solid goaltenders. And you look at Money Puck, Akira Schmid is the next highest ranked, right behind Philip Gustafsson of the Minnesota Wild. And I said to some people before the Devils Wild game that this is going to be a goalie duel, because analytically these guys are supreme goaltenders, but they played Vanacek, and Vanacek played really well. It's just a few unlucky bounces that changed it up. But back to the playoffs is going to be very weird, where defense monopolizes offense, and offense comes at an odd time. May not be the sexiest of goals, but it's going to be like the most unluckiest.
No, that's a fair point. It's a fair point both of you make. But like I said, Svestikov being out is going to be massive come playoff time. So we'll see what happens with Carolina. As far as my Rangers are concerned, look, they're 4 points behind the Devils. Do I think they're going to catch them? Ultimately, the answer, in my opinion, is no. I don't think so. I think the Devils are going to ultimately hold on to second place, and I think it'll be Rangers-Devils in the first round of the playoffs. And the only reason I say that is because, Neil, you know I've argued this for many years with this team, and I will continue to say it until I am blue in the face. Until they learn to actually know how to shoot, they are never going to win a Stanley Cup for the next 28 years and counting. Okay? Let's just call it what it is. They can't shoot. I understand you're trying to go fancy with the pretty passes and everything. That's gotta stop. It's gotta stop. It drives me crazy. I can't take it anymore. And once again, you're relying on Igor Shesterkin and Yaroslav Halak to do everything for you. Granted, you have been playing a lot better defense lately, which I will give you credit for, but even still, shooting is still suspect in my opinion. So until that changes for the Rangers, I don't see them getting past the first round against the Devils unless they fix something with the lines. I don't know what Gallant is trying to do with these lines. I don't know whether he's trying to figure out what's going on with Panarin and Kane. I don't know if he wants to put Kane with Kreider and Zibby. I don't know what he wants to do. At this point, Gallant is confusing me with all these line changes. It's not even funny. I am happy that the kid line is staying put with Hedel, Kako, and Lafreniere, because they seem to be really, really great together. But even still, I still see the Rangers holding on to third place. They're not catching the Devils. They're not catching Carolina. That's just my personal opinion. What say you guys here?
One of my observances from watching the Rangers last year in the playoffs is that Lafreniere doesn't really score all that much.
Exactly.
In the regular season, but he somehow turns that gear on for the playoffs. And I find it odd for a first overall pick to do that. And then Kako has a fairly rounded game for a second overall pick. And then he does decent in the playoffs, but he's not the most impactful, which throws me a bit off for why a guy would go that high in the draft. And then to me, it's also a bit of a coaching thing with pairing certain guys, a power forward on the wing, and then you have some guys that pass too much. And then I argue with jury making that trade to get Kane, because when you put him with Panarin, they pass too much, and
Thank
Panarin's a sniper.
you.
They pass too friggin' much, and the Devils do have their own problem when it comes to getting a little fancy, but they're starting to tweak things. Neil knows this,
Right.
And Tarasenko is a pure sniper. He doesn't pass. He shoots. But when it comes to the last couple of years of his contract for Tarasenko, health-wise, it could be a problem. I could be wrong. But when you play the long game, you're going to have to fill that hole. And then the Rangers have to probably bring in Brennan Othmann in 2 years. And then who knows what Lafreniere does. I know there's trade rumors circulating, but, you know, the Rangers and Gallant want to have the next best, tougher guy to come in to solidify them. But to me, like, I still think even if the Devils do win against the Rangers, it'd be like a 6 or 7 game series. And it won't be the sexiest, unlike the Eastern Conference Finals.
Fair point, Joe. Neil, what about you?
The Rangers have all year been a very interesting case because they come off of last season making not a miraculous, but a very
it was miraculous to me.
I guess to most was probably miraculous, but an unprecedented run to the conference finals. I mean, you're 1 win away from going to the Stanley Cup Finals. Who knows what would have happened when they played Colorado? Who knows? But you go into this season certainly with high expectations that now your championship window is open, and now it's time to try to go win a cup. And the Rangers are not the Rangers have a pretty decent combination of some good youth, but also they do rely heavily on their veterans, which I think definitely gives them an advantage. They also have just a lot of really good top 6 talent. I mean, Chris Kreider, say what you want about him personally, you know, his personality wise. I mean, his interviews are as stale as toast in many ways.
That is a fact, yes.
He's not considered to be the nicest person to ever meet, according to Rangers fans that have spoken to me. But, I mean, the dude's coming off a 52-goal season last year and has over 30 goals this year. Like, the dude can score. He brings his speed. He's very, very good. Mika Zibanejad, I still think, is one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated player in the NHL because nobody talks about him ever. Like, I don't understand why.
Trade for the Rangers.
Thank you.
It was probably, if you look at the Rangers setup now, it's probably the most important trade that they ever made in terms of just where they are right now. You know, you have the Breadman and Artemi Panarin, who I think now you're starting to see is way more of a talented passer than he is scorer. Like, the dude can score, there's no question about it. But his strong suit is him passing the puck. You know, you have Adam Fox, who's one of the top 5 defensemen in the NHL. You have Igor Shesterkin, who's considered still to be a top 5, certainly top 10 goaltender. Is he playing like it this year? Not as much.
No.
But what was the expectation after last year's Vezina year? Like, you know, it would have started to become unrealistic expectations for still a very young goaltender in his own right. And then obviously the coup de grace is getting the guy that everybody expected the Rangers to get before the season began, and that is Patrick Kane for literally peanuts. But that goes to show you when a player has all the leverage, what can happen. The Rangers going into the playoffs is simply going to be cup or bust. I mean, I don't think there's any other expectation that Rangers fans should have.
Agreed.
Because they really, in many degrees, have traded away a lot of assets, whether it was a lot in one trade or not. They don't have a huge amount of youth. They certainly do have some talent down there, but not an incredibly deep pool. And their whole organization and on all the moves they've made have all been based around this team trying to win a cup in the next year or 2 or 3 years, or however much their window really is. In terms of, can they jump the Devils and get into second place? Absolutely. There's no question in my mind that the Rangers there's 9 games left to go, and they're only behind the Devils by 4, Jimmy. And if the Rangers
if you win all 9, that's 18 points.
There you go. And here's a good example. The Rangers have a game against the Devils on Thursday. That's a huge opportunity to steal points from a team that you are trying to get past in the standings. There's a lot that can happen between now and the second week of April. Right? I'm just saying. I definitely think that there's a possibility. Do I think that happens? As biased as this may sound, I'd like to lean more towards the Devils are going to still hold on to that second spot. Who knows? Maybe they jump the Hurricanes into first place in the Metro, and they don't even focus on the Rangers going into round one. I think most Devils fans want to play the Rangers in round one for nothing else more than just the excitement of playing your biggest rival in the first round of the playoffs. I think the NHL needs that type of first round matchup. I know that we could potentially have Tampa versus Toronto again, but I think having the Devils and Rangers in round one would be a great way to get the playoffs started with a huge matchup between these two teams in the first round.
I agree.
I personally welcome it. I want it to happen. I don't really care that much about whether we have home ice against them or not, because first of all, the Devils are the best team in the NHL in terms of road record. They have dominated on the road. They're only 3 road wins away from setting a new franchise record. So, there's that. I'm not saying the Devils can't win at home. They certainly can, but they've certainly had more success this year on the road. So if they have to go into a 7-game series where 4 of the 7 games are in the Garden, I'm not entirely worried about it per se. I'm more or less just, this Devils team is capable of being anybody that they play, regardless of who they play. I think they're good enough to compete with Boston and all these teams right now. And the reality is that the Rangers have a boatload of pressure. If they get bounced in the first round, whether it goes to 7 games or not, it's a huge failure considering all the moves 100%. That they made. And considering, as Joe pointed out, the little amount of money the Rangers will have to use going into next season. It was reported that if Patrick Kane even wants to entertain the idea of sticking around long term, he'd have to take so little money, which he may not care about. He may just decide to take a semi 4 or 5 year deal at $2 million a year for all we know. I mean, honestly, like that, it's always possible, especially if you want to try to keep, your core guys around long term. But in terms of the Rangers, there's still danger. They're still a very dangerous team, regardless of how good or bad they might look and whatever. They're still a very dangerous team when everything is clicking. And I certainly respect them and how good they are. And it's going to be a fight to the very end in this division, regardless of how everything goes. And but make no mistake about it, the New York Rangers, it is cup or bust for them. There's no question about it in my mind.
100% agree.
A lot of
Joe?
the picks that are left are conditionals, and you don't know if it's going to be staying in this year or it's going to slide over to next season. So really, there's a lot of variables that Ranger fans are going to be like, what is this Devils guy talking about? What is going on? I mean, let me just throw in like some upcoming UFA and RFA stuff. So when the 23-24 offseason hits, Tarasenko's up. Patrick Kane is up, as Neil pointed out. Philip Hedl is an RFA. He's going to look for a payday. And then you have Tyler Mott, and he's a cheap guy to bring back. But the thing is, Kane's 34. Do you want him the next 3 years? I think it would be a bad move for the Rangers, honestly, in my opinion. And Tyler Mott, you better off having, because you guys had him once before. And if you guys want to trade Lafreniere, I mean, by all means, move him as an RFA if you get the right offer. Nico Mikkola.
Fair enough.
Nico Mikkola, to me, is a really good defenseman. Hits hard, blocks shots. He's a player who I label as a Sasquatch, because he does all those nitty-gritty things that helps your defense become stronger than weaker. And that's why you guys got him in the Tarasenko deal. If you want to win a bit of that Tarasenko deal, you have to extend him. And then you have Keandre Miller. You need to extend him. And then Yaroslav Halak. I think the Rangers are eventually going to move on from him. They might extend him a year, but who knows what they got going this offseason. for a goalie?
I mean, both of you do make great points, but I don't know, man. It is going to be a tight race to the finish line. I happen to agree with you, but this definitely is cup or bust for the New York Rangers, no question about it. All right, before I let you gentlemen go, final expectations for the Devils come playoff time. How far do you guys think they can go this year?
They make it out of the first round in 7 games.
Okay.
And the Devils end up going into the second round, going there. They probably play a team like Carolina or Boston. They probably lose to Boston in 6 games, but it's a good learning experience for the team going forward. And the Devils don't need to make that many offseason acquisitions. They just add guys from within.
I will give you a very not generic. I'll give you a very, open answer to this. I think the Devils are going to go as far as they want to go. That will be my answer. I think that this team is capable of doing whatever they want. It could be a first round exit, second round, could lose in the conference finals, could make the cup final, could win the whole damn thing for all we know. I mean, I don't think that is an unrealistic thinking from this team. I know that people talk about you don't have a lot of experience, in terms of, this team and everything. The Devils do have some, which is important. I think they have a true experienced gem and a guy like Andre Palat, who has been to the Cup final in each of the last 3 years. Eric Holla has a little bit of playoff experience. He went to the Cup final with the Vegas Golden Knights. Dougie Hamilton's had some really good success in the playoffs, whether he was with Boston or Carolina. And you just have a very hungry team. You have a hungry team that wants to prove a lot of the doubters wrong. I think that's the motivation. And I think the Devils are going into these playoffs with a very relaxed type of attitude because nobody expected them to even get this far. Nobody expected them to be here. So you might as well go out and be the shit stormers, just the guys that come in and just kick ass and take no prisoners and just go into it and have a lot of success. I see this team being like what you saw the Chicago Blackhawks be in 2009. Chicago, this was right before they went on their dynasty run. They went all the way to the conference finals and lost in a very tough series against the Detroit Red Wings, the defending Cup champs. They went all the way. They went almost all the way to the Cup final in that year, and that eventually propelled them to 3 Cups in 5 years. I think that is what I see from this team. But I think my honest opinion is that this Devils team is going to go about as far as they want to go. And so we'll see. So that's the way I look at it.
I'll add this in there. So Tom Fitzgerald's been around the playoffs with Tom Fitzgerald since he was a director of player development with the Penguins. And then you have him as the GM. And then you have Dan McKinnon, who's the assistant GM of the Devils, who was another guy in the Pittsburgh organization under Shiro with Fitzgerald. And they've been together part of that Stanley Cup run with the 2008-2009 Stanley Cup Penguins team. And then you got to add in the fact that you have Ryan McGill, who's been through the 5 years of Vegas making playoff runs, plus being at the Stanley Cup. You had Dave Rogalski, who's won the Cup as player development director and goalie coach with the St. Louis Blues. So he knows what it means to have a guy like Jordan Binnington to win it. And then you have no one else other than Andrew Brunette, who's helped the Florida Panthers as a coach that jumped in when Quinn, I think of the guy that got ousted from Florida. Remind me later.
Oh, Joel Quenneville.
Joel Quenneville. Thank you. I had my cues right, but
it's all good. It's all good.
Andrew Burnett had helped the Panthers win the President's Trophy more than a year ago, and so he's helped the Devils improve their power play, and they're only getting better over time. And Elliot Friedman said this with Jeff Merrick. It's more of a coach in the waiting. Early in the season, on the 32 Thoughts podcast, and I believe that if Lindy Ruff does not return, I believe the Devils will also promote Sergei Brylin to the bench, because he's been a really good eye in the sky, but he also works with the players individually, and he's won 3 Stanley Cups as a player with the Devils, and he's been with the team in Binghamton and Utica, and he spent over 9 years with the team. And I really can't say no to seeing Sarge on the Devils bench, bringing that experience and that passion, that no BS messing around, that old Red Army, Soviet Union mindset, that he is an asset than he is a liability. He's going to help the Devils youth become more like focused and driven.
And that's the bottom line. Gentlemen, this was such a freaking pleasure. Neil, always great to talk to you. You know you're always welcome back. And Joe, this will not be your last time on the show, my friend. You are an absolute joy. Both of you are fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on to talk a little bit of hockey. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks again, Jimmy. It was great to be back. Great to talk some Devils hockey, and looking forward to talking again. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk.
New Jersey exists.
Yes, it
That's
does.
true.
Thank you. At least we all agree there. At least we all agreed there, and we'll definitely be talking Devils again, depending on what happens with them in the playoffs. Neil Villapiano and Jersey Joe, go subscribe to Devil State of Mind and to the Heads Up Hockey Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor.fm, wherever you listen to it. Go subscribe to these gentlemen. They are truly fantastic stuff. Devils fans, we want to hear from you, though. Where do you expect the Devils to fall in the playoffs? Let us know down below in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on the audio side, follow us on social media at BottomlineWMCX and use hashtag BottomLine, and let us know what you think about the Devils and any other team in the Metro. We can go anywhere in the NHL, but let us know what you think. For Neil Villapiano and for Jersey Joe, I'm Jimmy. This is the Bottom Line. Have a great rest of your day, afternoon, or evening, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace, and take care.
Peace.